G'day. Welcome to the Essential Oil Science Series, video number 11. This is the first of a two-part video on antifungal oils. I was told by someone very important that I looked a bit rough in my last video, so I've tried to pretty myself up a little bit. Hope it's satisfactory. So I am back in beautiful New Hampshire, and just kind of overcome almost by the liveliness of the life here. So I'm actually going to step back a little bit from our normal routine and talk a little bit about life itself, some of the principles, the little bit that I know about it. Anyway, so bear with me. From a kind of physics standpoint, life is an organizational principle. It is a means by which things that have been scattered and disordered are brought together and organized. Starting with a single cell like this, it's a highly organized thing. It's got a cell wall, it's got all these organelles inside of it, and there's DNA in there which is highly organized. There's all of these highly organized structures, highly organized processes going on inside even just a single cell. And then you get all the way up to multicellular things like this beautiful maple tree behind me, which is just a fine example of organization. It really is. So I've got the second law of thermodynamics written down here. This is a reminder that what it basically says is that if any closed system will become more and more disordered over time, or at least it won't become more ordered spontaneously all by itself. So if the Earth was closed off and had a big blanket around it, then that's what would happen. Things would just become more and more scattered and disorganized and disparate. Life is the antidote to that. It's an organizational principle, but it requires energy to organize things. So we take that blanket off. Now we've got the sun shining on the earth, and the sun is what provides the energy for this organization to occur, or for life to occur. So you can kind of divide life in a number of different ways, but one way of dividing living organisms is by where they get their energy from and where they get their carbon from. Carbon is the backbone of life, as it is, for these essential oil compounds we've been looking at. So very roughly, there's organisms that get their energy from physical sources like the sun or volcanoes or something like that, and plants fit into that category. They use photosynthesis, so they take the sun's energy and synthesize compounds. So they take a bit of carbon dioxide from up there, a little bit of water from down there, some minerals from over there, and they combine them together. They synthesize new compounds. And then there are other organisms like us, animals, who can't get energy directly from sun. We get our energy and our carbon from things like plants that got their energy originally from the sun. We eat plants and we eat other animals that have eaten plants, and that's where we get our energy from, and that's where we get our carbon from. We break those compounds down again into their simple forms, and we scatter them out into the world again through our breath. So that's the cycle of life. Fungi fit into the same category as humans, and in fact fungi are brilliant at breaking things down. They're the great decomposers of nature. So a plant that's fallen down on the ground, most of its decomposition occurs because of fungi. And it's important that it's broken down. If there weren't any fungi around, you'd have a whole bunch of logs and trees lying on the ground. Nothing would ever happen to them, and the nutrients in those trees and logs would never get back into the earth again and be able to be used to grow the next generation of plants. So decomposition is very important. So here in New Hampshire, where there's about 6 months of sunlight and warmth, where things can really grow, there's a whole lot of plant activity, but at the same time there's a whole lot of fungal activity. Look at the roof of my porch here, covered in mold. It'll even decompose paint. It's such a good decomposer. Inside of my house, I was when I got back after being away for 6 months, I was overcome by the smell of kind of rotting wood, or at least wet wood. And there were obviously a lot of mold spores in the air because I was having trouble breathing. I had, snot pouring down here. And I was very, very sad to find that our beautiful little peach tree had died. And what's the culprit? Well, this little guy here. So this is the visible part of the fungi that has killed this tree. The rest of it is inside the tree doing its work. This is just the fruiting body. This is the bit that produces spores which are released into the air so that this guy can kind of spread its seed around. And fungi consist of small cells which tend to be long and tubular, like that little picture here, and they operate by releasing enzymes into their environment, and those enzymes break down the compounds around them into digestible compounds, and then they're absorbed back into the cell where those compounds can be used. So as you can imagine, well, think of yeast. Yeast is an example of, it's actually a single-celled fungi. Warmth and moisture really assist in this process. Like your yeast, you can put it in the fridge. It's a dry, cool environment, and it can go dormant, just like the rest of the fungi around here is going to go dormant in the winter. But when you provide warmth and water, it can undergo this process very easily, and then there's going to be a lot of fungal activity. All right, so enough of that. How do we kill the darn stuff? Well, there is no one simple solution. There isn't a single compound that's going to kill all fungi and make your life fungus free. By the way, you don't want it to be fungus free. There's a lot of fungus that is important. I was reading my yogurt container this morning, and it listed 5 different fungi that are apparently important for my digestive system. There's fungus on our skin and in our hair, there's in our nails, under our nails, etc., etc., etc. We live, symbiotically with fungus. We need it and it needs us. But anyway, if we did want to get rid of some fungus, some troublesome fungus, there isn't one bomb that's going to kill it all. And that's because there's millions of types of fungi. Each one relies on its own unique set of chemical processes to live and reproduce and do all of that stuff. For example, this paper here looks at how dill oil can kill this one particular fungus here, and it does it by affecting the plasma membrane and the mitochondria in very, very specific ways for this one specific fungus. So dill oil may not be effective on a different type of fungus because it uses a different set of mechanisms, but cinnamon might be effective. So I've got a bunch of experiments going on in my home right now, and I'll talk about them next week, where I'm trying out different oils on different fungi in our house, and yeah, I'll let you know next week how they go. I will just mention briefly for this week that I've been running on guard non-stop inside, and my breathing and everything else, I'm not having this response that I was when I originally came into this house from breathing the air. So the on guard is obviously helping with whatever fungus is producing the ill effects in me. All right, this video is getting very long. I'm going to stop there and we'll pick it up next week. Have a fantastic week. Bye.